Welcome to 5 Minute Bible, your daily guide for your daily reading. Today's April the 12th, and we'll be looking at 1 Samuel 15 through 17. Now today we come to a decisive turning point in the history of Israel. We're about 240 to 260 years after the death of Joshua, and what began with Saul's compromise is now reaching a breaking point. Because in these chapters, something massive happens. One king is being rejected, and another one is quietly behind the scenes being raised up. Saul is corrected, and he's also condemned. And at the very same time, God is preparing his replacement that will take 40 years to work itself out. And in that way, chapter 15 is where Saul ultimately falls. Destroy the Amalekites and everything in their city. There's no ambiguity in that. There's no confusion in that. And yet Saul doesn't listen, and he adjusts the plans of God. He spares the king. He keeps the best of the livestock for himself, and then unbelievably, he presents it as an offering to God. It's an offering of his own obedience. And when Samuel finally confronts him about it, Saul insists that he actually did obey God, showing how delusional he has become. He hasn't just disobeyed, he's redefined reality. And Samuel cut straight through all of it to speak to Saul, saying that obedience is better than sacrifice, and rebellion isn't small, but it's actually treason against God. So the Lord in this moment rejects Saul as king, and then chapter 16 shifts the focus onto a new king. Saul is still sitting on the throne, and he's going to be sitting on the throne for the next 30 or 40 years, but God has already moved on from him and is going to raise up a new man who is going to be a true king for the people of Israel. And in that way, he sends Samuel all the way to the little podunk town of Bethlehem, and he goes to the house of a man named Jesse, and he tells Jesse to bring out his sons, and one by one, all of them are brought out, strong, impressive, and king-like, and God rejects every single one of them until all 6 of them have been rejected. And Samuel even asks, is there not another? And then finally Jesse brings out the overlooked shepherd boy who is his 7th son, the one that no one thought to bring, the one that everyone overlooked, and yet it is this one that God makes clear will be the new anointed king. Because man looks at the outside, but God looks at the heart. And David is anointed by Samuel, and from that moment on, everything in the narrative begins to shift and change, even if it doesn't look like it yet. Samuel has just dropped a bomb in the nation of Israel. Then in chapter 17, it brings it all out into the open. This Goliath figure, this giant, steps forward and mocks the armies and mocks the living God and defies Israel. And Saul and his army freeze. They do nothing. They allow the terror to paralyze them. But David doesn't do that. David shows up to bring food to his brothers who are in the army, and no one is doing anything about this Goliath figure who's screaming out mocking insults to God. So what does David do? David doesn't measure the size of Goliath. He measures the size of his God. And then he realizes that this man needs to be stopped. And if no one else is going to do it, I'm going to do it. He doesn't even accept the armor. He uses no hesitation. He steps forward and with a single stone strikes him down and wins the victory for Israel. The one who looked the weakest became the true deliverer, and the one who looked the strongest became the one who was slain. And in that way, I want you to ask the following question as you read the narrative today. Do we obey God on his terms, or like Saul, do we try to reshape obedience to fit what we think feels reasonable? Because God doesn't accept partial obedience dressed up as faithfulness. He accepts the heart. He accepts the heart that is fully devoted to him and his word and obedience. And in that way, there's a collision that is happening in these chapters. There's 2 kings that really represent 2 ways of living. Saul looks like a king. He looks like the one who has power, and David looks like nothing. And yet, Saul is the one who's collapsing, and David is the one who's being established. Saul thinks that he can adjust the commands of God and still be faithful, so he keeps the appearance of obedience while hollowing out the substance of it, and yet David does the opposite. He has no position, no recognition, no visible authority, but his heart is aligned with God, and he knows that God will fulfill his promises. So when Goliath speaks, David doesn't even hesitate. He doesn't negotiate. He doesn't tremble like the rest of Israel. He acts and springs into motion because his confidence isn't in what he sees, but it's in the God who is. And here's the tension that presses into each and every single one of us. You can have position, language, reputation, and authority and be completely out of step with God. And you can also be the one who is overlooked, unseen, underestimated, and be exactly in the center of God's will. And in that way, all of this is pointing forward to Jesus, because David is an anointed shepherd who defeats an enemy for his people. He wins and they share in the victory. And that is the pattern that points us forward to Jesus, because he fulfills it so perfectly. Because we are Israel in the story. We're the ones who are standing there, weak, pathetic, unable to win, shaking in our boots, unable to save ourselves. And it is Christ who steps forward as the true king. Not with worldly wisdom or strength, but with perfect obedience. And though it looks like weakness, the cross is where he defeats sin, death, and the devil with a single blow. Saul's kingdom fails because of disobedience, but Christ's kingdom stands forever because of his perfect righteousness. He doesn't just win a battle, he's going to build a kingdom that's going to continue advancing all the way into the ends of the earth until every single enemy is put underneath his feet. So as you read today, I want you to watch this tension unfolding. The rejected king is still sitting on the throne, and the true king is still hiding in the shadows, waiting to appear, but that will not last much longer, because tomorrow it's all going to start to come out into the open. But with that, I want you to read your Bible carefully, devotionally, and joyfully, and may the Lord use his word to sanctify you completely, and we will continue our journey tomorrow. God bless you.